with that, we welcome you and everyone to our latest edition of the Linux on Baseball podcast. Erik Sherman, author of 8 terrific books. He's got another one coming out that we'll discuss as well. That release date for the book on DEWEY, Dwight Evans, coming out in July. Erik, I'm still kind of I haven't done this in a few years. You're my first guest back. Did you get the open there from Citi Field, or was that something that our audience just got there?
Oh, I got it. Yeah, it
You
looks
did.
great. Billy Joel is one of my favorite singers, and one of the great memories I think in Mets history was during the 2015 World Series when Billy Joel was there, and as a spectator, I guess in a luxury box, and he's just the look in his eyes as he's looking around the ballpark where there's 40,000 fans singing in unison the song that really made him famous. I mean, that was definitely one of the top highlights of that World Series.
As I came on yesterday and sort of did what I'm calling Sugar's random thoughts and just different things from going on around baseball yesterday, of course, the anniversary of Jackie Robinson breaking the color barrier, I had that, and I thought, why not? Because Sunday night, CBS was ridiculed for how they did Billy Joel at Madison Square Garden, and there was just a little clip
I see.
of Billy
I
Joel.
see.
So
I
that's,
see where you went. Okay.
my humor is a little different. So, Erik, even since Sunday, so much has gone on around baseball, whether
Yeah.
history or present day, prospects coming up, the deaths in the last couple of days. We learned today of not only Carl Erskine, but also the White Rat, Whitey
Yeah.
Herzog, who we go back to the 1980s. The reason we're having Erik on, he's gracious enough to take a couple of minutes with us here. You were at the ceremony at Citi Field on Sunday as the Mets retired number 16 for Dwight Gooden. I scrolled through your X feed by Erik Sherman, by the way, Erik with a K. And, we grew up, you've got a couple of years on me, but Dwight Gooden was my hero. And the way I explained it yesterday was Dwight Gooden in the world of sports, he's the one who showed me that, you know what? Everyone's human. We make mistakes. And so 84, 85, 86, then I go to 87. And I'm there when he returned. I had an older friend of the family who took me in, and I was there for Dwight Gooden's return. I said it yesterday. I wasn't there in 1996 when he threw his no-hitter, and I had tickets. But let's get into your day. You called Dwight Gooden a friend. How did that relationship develop over the years?
It developed when I was writing my book, Kings of Queens, Life Beyond Baseball with the 86 Mets, where I went out, I traveled the country, and I visited the key and most intriguing players from that 86 Mets team. And certainly, Doc Gooden was at the top of that list. His life, it's very much like a Greek tragedy. He was the most dominant pitcher in the game in 84, 85, and one of the most dominant pitchers in 86. And it was just how he burst onto the scene. He was superhuman. NBC in the 80s, they had a catchphrase, must see TV, because those were the days of the Cosby Show and Cheers and so forth. And well, Doc Gooden was must see TV in a different way. The city really did stop on the nights that he pitched. His 85 season in particular was nothing short of epic. 1.53 ERA, 24-4 record. The most dominant season I've ever seen. And so to be at that level, and then because of cocaine use and a cocaine addiction, to come down to earth like you said, and even the depths of drug addiction, and it's he wrote about it in his own book, which is a great book. Came out about 12, 13 years ago, and he says it was just one of those things that after the 85 season when he won the Cy Young Award, he's still a 21-year-old kid, and he goes back home to Florida, and he goes to see a high school friend, and and the friend is dealing drugs, and Doc tried coke for the first time, and he was hooked. And that happens sometimes. You have other guys, a lot of guys in the 80s, a lot of players in the 80s did cocaine, but they didn't get hooked. They didn't get addicted to it. It got its hook into Doc, and and it's something he struggled with for most of his life. And it's really one of the great tragedies. The last thing I'll say about it is, his numbers are comparable to Hall of Famers like Whitey Ford, but because his career was interrupted several times, he's not in the Hall of Fame. But you look at his numbers, my goodness. They're close to what Sandy Koufax's were too, and just a remarkable pitcher who, if he had avoided drug use and addiction, may have gone on to become, if not the greatest pitcher of all time, top five. He was that good.
Do you think he was fully able to grasp and appreciate just how much he meant to Met fans? I'm sure he did leading up to Sunday, but I perhaps in watching the video and you being there, did it elevate to a different level altogether?
He has spent his entire life, his entire adult life, trying to make up for what happened. Frank Cashin, the Mets GM of the 80s, um, he was less than sympathetic to guys like Gooden and Strawberry, coming out and saying, those guys really wrecked what could have been a dynasty. And of course, Frank Cashin knew what dynasties were, coming from the Orioles in the 1960s and into the 70s, when the Orioles just had a remarkable run of success. Not so much in the World Series, but um, they had a string of 3 seasons from 69 through 71, where I think they averaged 109, 108, 109 wins. But anyway, um, players hear that stuff. And whereas Darryl Strawberry hit rock bottom, he's doing crack and he's doing cocaine and alcohol, and then his health. He had tremendous problems with his health. Lost the will to live, completely hitting rock bottom, but then was able to pick himself up after that. And his wife Tracy is a remarkable woman who's helped him a great deal. But for Doc, it's been a struggle, and it's really sad because I'll say this about Doc Gooden: um, he's one of the sweetest people I've ever met, not just in baseball but in life, and he cares deeply about how he's perceived, and it's just such a shame what happened, because he really could have had one of the all-time great pitching careers in the history of the game.
Erik, removed from it 2 days plus now from Sunday and the ceremonies, what still resonates? What's still sort of right there in the center of your mind about what you took in?
Oh, a lot of things. So I was there when they retired Jerry Kuzman's number 36, and I become friends with Jerry again because of a book, After the Miracle. The Everlasting Brotherhood of the '69 Mets, and um, so um, it was different, I think, because that was 1969. It was, we're talking 17 years before they won again in '86. So um, it was also during COVID, so that was very different. So to me, being in really three suites, I think they opened up the doors and made three suites out of one, and just how many friends and family and old teammates came back to see Doc. Um, it was really remarkable. It wasn't just his former teammates you saw on the field, but others like Rafael Santana and Barry Lyons and Roger McDowell, and um, uh, to go along with the guys that were on the field, like Mookie and Howard Johnson, and of course Darryl. And um, so that really resonated with me. What Doc still means to people today. Hank Azaria was there. I believe Richard Gere was there. I didn't see him, but just I mean, all the stars were coming out, and we're talking 40 years now, 40 years
Yeah.
removed, and that was really impressive. And the other thing that resonated was Doc's speech. It was magnificent. Um, it was well told. His interaction with the crowd, when he was talking about how he kept wanting to come back to the Mets after they let him go the first time, and um, so I, I I don't know if the Wilpons were listening or watching, but I don't know what they think about that. But I think it's great what Steve Cohen has done. He's really embracing the Mets past, which has had hints of glory,
With
but
bumps in the road
yeah, but
or
but but
asterisks.
but no glory as great as what they experienced in the 80s. And so now three of the Fab Four from the 80s have had their numbers retired. Keith Hernandez, Doc Gooden soon, Darryl Strawberry. And I really hope, I spent a good deal of time with Sandy Carter, who came. And, I told her I think she's going to be back again for Gary's number 8. I really hope so, because they never would have won the World Series without Gary Carter.
Yeah. I want to touch on Gary Carter in just a moment. But Tim Britton in The Athletic wrote a piece about the relationship as Dwight Gooden came to the big leagues with Mike Torres. And you took a picture with Mike. You shared
Yep.
it on X by Erik Sherman. And you gave me a little history lesson because, we didn't have Baseball Reference. We didn't have everything available to us as I was growing up as a kid. And I think I would have taken it all in a different way. But, Mike Torres, Red Sox, Yankees during the 1970s. I remember Mike Torres as a kid, only, and it wasn't with intent, but hitting Dickie Thon. But Mike Torres, reading Tim Britton's article and seeing him there, that, that's one of the guys that Dwight Gooden wanted there. And Mike Torres understanding that this kid's coming to the big leagues, I'm going to be out of a job.
Yeah.
And
That's right.
Tim did a great job capturing it. But, Mike Torres is there. Again, you have a different way of looking at Mike Torres from what I have. But for someone like that to be there, again, it's a big part of Dwight Gooden's story.
It really is. And you make a great point. The book I did with Davy Johnson, his autobiography, we talked about that. We talked about Mike Torres, how the Mets were going to have to let Torres go to make room for not just the Dwight Goodens, but the Ron Darlings, the Sid Fernandezes, and so forth. I mean, the Mets farm system was historically good, and they were all coming up at the same time. And I mean, Davey was the perfect manager because he ran the farm system. He managed at various levels. He knew all these guys, and with Doc. Frank Cashin did not want to bring Doc up in '84. He wanted to wait until '85. And with Strawberry, he didn't want to really bring him up till '84 either. But with Doc, I mean, he's a kid. He's 19 years old in '84. I mean, it's ridiculous when you think about, if you have a child who's 19 and the maturity level. But to Davy's credit, he said, no. Doc's ready. I'm going to take care of him. And he did. And so I think you have to give Davy a lot of credit because, if he waits till '85, it's another year to develop. And maybe he doesn't have the season that he had in '85 without the tremendous 1984 Rookie of the Year season he had. And, he probably should have won. Today, I think he would have won the Cy Young Award in '84. Rick Sutcliffe ended up winning. And I mean, he wasn't even in the National League until June 1st. But, he gets traded. He gets traded to the Cubs. I think it was on June 1st. Then he goes out and he wins something like 17 out of 18 games, something like that. And and they give him the Cy Young, and the Cubs had won the division, which helped. But Doc's 84. I think he had 276 strikeouts, and
Rookie record. Yep.
yeah, I mean, I think Doc should have won the Cy Young Award in the '84, because he pitched the full season. But
so we talk about his Rookie of the Year in 1984. Privilege. I say anything I've ever done in baseball has been a privilege for me. Riding the buses in the Carolina League, and as a broadcaster years ago, Wilmington franchise had Reggie Jackson, Al Jackson's son, as a pitching coach. Reggie was a teammate on that 1983 Lynchburg Mets team in the Carolina League, and they were buddies. And 300 strikeouts in the minor leagues, and he's like, kind of what you're saying is like, this guy's got to be in the big leagues next year. You got to bottle this up and put this in the big leagues in '84. That's where he should be. He shouldn't be AA, shouldn't be AAA. That always stuck with me.
yeah, Lenny Dykstra, when I interviewed him for Kings of Queens, he was out in center field watching Doc as an 18-year-old, and he told Doc, "You're ready for the major leagues." Those hitters, he said, they look like scared children, and his stuff was just so good. And another thing about Doc too is he had great parents, very supportive parents. Doc was the first one at the ballpark, the last one to leave. Parents that came to the games, and Davey spoke glowingly about the support that he had at home, which was very different to what Darryl had experienced from his father. Really, his mother, it was a different story. The mother was supportive, but Darryl grew up in an abusive home because of his father, so Doc had everything going for him. He had this incredible God-given talent, generational talent. The support system from all around, and again, such a cautionary tale with, he just, the first time he tried Coke, he gets hooked on it, and it's just so sad, but it doesn't take away from what we saw with Doc. You know, Matt Harvey, the Mets pitcher from about 10 years ago. He was the closest in like one season to what I saw or what I remember about Doc Gooden.
Yeah.
How the crowd was just so incredibly electric into every single pitch. I hadn't seen that since Doc. But that's what it was like with Doc. Every single game he pitched, it was just electric. They were selling out games, and it was an incredible experience. And I'm really glad for Doc because we talked about this, how he was never really able to come back to the Mets despite all of his efforts. Every time he would get released from one team, after he always wanted to come back to the Mets. And now I feel like he can live at peace with himself, like he's come full circle. The Mets retiring a number, it has been pretty rare, so it's quite an honor.
Outside of the Yankees, and I thought about this the other day, of you talk about, and I love the way it looks up in left field. I wish they would be closer, but that's okay. I like the look of it. The Yankees and the Cardinals retire. You've got the history. You retire the numbers. The Red Sox, and different franchises have different things for retiring numbers. But yeah, 16 and 18, do belong up there. And so transitioning from that into, you mentioned Sandy Carter, the wife of the late Gary Carter. He had a very good relationship, and I love watching all the videos of Carter. Before he got traded from Montreal, they were together. They were the battery in the All-Star game in San Francisco. So, Gary Carter understood what New York had. That helped make his decision. He's like, yeah, I'll go along with this trade. This makes sense for me and my family right now. But Gary Carter, Dwight, they all partied together. They all did things together, but it always seemed like Dwight did his own thing. And Gary Carter was excluded from a lot of those partiers that the Mets had in that 86 season. Is that accurate in your view?
I would phrase it like this. I think Gary Carter, he was a milk drinker,
Yeah.
and he was older than a lot of those guys, and he was kind of like a scout leader, you know. He he was there for the guys. He was a very nice guy and very supportive and a real leader. Um, uh, very different from Keith Hernandez, who is also a terrific leader on that team too. Um, but it's interesting. Uh, Carter, um, he he has become for so many of those guys on the '86 team someone that they all wish that they could have been. Time and time again. I actually wrote
Yeah.
a chapter. I wrote a chapter in Kings of Queens about that. I interviewed these guys, and Strawberry, Gooden, um, Dykstra. Like they really, after time, they came to realize that Gary Carter lived the life that they really wanted to live. He had the happy marriage, and very much involved with the children, and just very lived a very clean life. A man of faith, and it's interesting now that I mean Daryl Strawberry is a preacher. I mean he travels all over the country and the world as a preacher, and um, that wasn't on very many bingo cards back in the '80s and '90s.
Yeah.
He's really come a long way, and he is such an impressive person. But getting back to the farm system the Mets had back in the early '80s, it kept Keith Hernandez around. You know, Keith
Right.
Keith didn't like being in New York, and it's kind of interesting that we're talking about this with Whitey Herzog passing today. I mean, the Cardinals won the World Series in '82, and Keith Hernandez, I mean, he was a superstar with the Cardinals. He won the MVP in '79 that he shared with Stargell, and I mean, he was a perennial Gold Glove winner. 310, 320 hitter, and I remember the night the Mets traded Neil Allen to get him, and I'm like, I couldn't believe it. I'm like, what? And so anyway, I mean, it was the greatest. I think it was probably the greatest trade the Mets ever made. And Keith, after the season ended, he's like, should I? He talked to his accountant. Do I have enough money so I could stop playing baseball? His accountant said no, and then he talked to his father, and his father was a huge baseball fan, and a student of the game. And he said, no, you don't want to go anywhere. The Mets are going to be really, really good soon. They are stacked in their system.
Yeah. And
Yeah, go ahead.
you touched on early Cashin having, not an understanding or the empathy for what Dwight Gooden and Daryl Strawberry went through. Big part of that trade, as we recognize Whitey Herzog, who passed away earlier today, he was a big part of sending Keith Hernandez out. And I, from what I've read, it was, we'll get you right now. You're no longer here. We're coming off a World Series, and guess what? We are sending you to New York, and that was not a destination point.
No, Keith was not Whitey Herzog's kind of guy. Um, Herzog liked the George Brett type players.
Yeah,
The guys that just lived and breathed and ate baseball. Not that Keith Hernandez didn't have that competitive spirit. He did, but he was really cerebral. He studied the Civil War. He did the New York Times crossword puzzle, um, and he also, there were certainly rumors abound about his own cocaine use, and Whitey Herzog was an old school guy, and even though Keith was hardly alone, even on the
right.
Cardinals, um, he was, the I think he was the first one to go. I think they had Lonnie Smith. And anyway, I don't want to drag out others into this, but but it was a gift for the Mets, and
Yeah.
they were really lucky to get him. And uh, I mean, Keith was every bit as important as Doc and Darryl and Gary because he was like a manager on the field. He he was really the bridge to Davy. You know, the players would come to him, and if they had questions they didn't want to ask Davy, and just a great leader. I think Keith would have made an outstanding manager. It's I would have liked to have seen that, and but it's never going to happen.
If you don't mind, I want to get two more in with you.
Yeah,
One on
sure.
your upcoming book with Dwight Evans, and just to kind of, with Dwight Gooden, and the reason we've been talking, and I've enjoyed this tremendously. What's next for Dwight Gooden? What do you envision him being involved with going forward, short term and long term?
Um, well, I think having his number retired, I saw a different Dwight Gooden than any Dwight Gooden I've seen in my life on Sunday. He um, he looked great. He was wearing a suit and tie, which is very unlike Doc. And and I mean, there was just it was a mob scene in those suites. And I tried to get over to him just to shake his hand and congratulate him. Couldn't get to him, and it was just and he handled it so incredibly well. And I think he'll continue, to talk to kids about, the dangers of drug use and addiction, and I think he's just going to continue doing what he's doing, and I really hope that in some way, the honor that he received Sunday will bring about some closure to him, so that if there is any guilt, that it's gone now. And I can't say enough about Steve Cohen, doing what he did for him.
So your next book is going to be released in July. Give us kind of an update on Dewey and your book and your collaboration with Dwight Evans.
I am so proud of this book. Dwight Evans, everybody knows that he was one of the great players of his generation. He won 8 Gold Gloves. Here's something you may not know. He had more home runs in the American League in the 1980s than anybody. He had more
That's
extra
saying a
base.
lot.
It is. He had more extra base hits in the 1980s than any player in Major League Baseball. He is top three in so many team records in the glorious, iconic history of the Boston Red Sox. Um, Everybody knows that about him, that he had a rifle for an arm. But what people don't know is that he spent most of his career caring for 2 sons who suffered from neurofibromatosis. It's NF for short, and it's similar to elephant man's disease, but it's not the same thing. Tumors develop in the nerves, and it's a painful existence. And eventually, people with NF will succumb to the disease. And sadly, Dewey lost both of his sons because of NF. But to have the career that he had, both of his sons had more than 40 surgeries. He's in and out of hospitals, sleepless nights, and to put up the numbers that he did, and to carry himself the way that he did all those years, 20 years in the big leagues, and this is his 50th year in baseball. Um, he's just so inspirational, and so it's a very telling book. Dwight Evans, his whole career, he's been a very private person, and he really opens up in this book. And a cherry on the top, we got the one of the greats of all time, and another extremely private guy, Carl Yastrzemski, to do the forward. So we were really excited about that too.
Terrific. Erik, great stuff. Again, Erik's collaboration, DEWEY, Beyond the Gold Glove, released in July. Again, scrolling through a lot of different things on your social media, by Erik Sherman is the X or Twitter handle. So you had one more picture. So sometimes I come with props, and we'll close with this. So I took this one off the shelf because you just put a picture up of Peter Golenbach. This is Bats. This is Davy Johnson's book. Let me get it in there somehow, some way. Yours is the hardcover. Yours is the hardcover.
Right.
So this read as a teenager. This read, sorry, I'll get the camera right and the angle and all that. Your book on Davy Johnson during COVID a couple of years ago. So thank you for that. DEWEY will be on my list. It's a long reading list right now. I'm putting Mookie Wilson's book in front of Dwight Evans, but I'd love to have you down the road and talk about some of your other books as well. But I do appreciate taking the time with me tonight, and I wish you all the best. I know you took the time. You're traveling here, so safe travels to you as well.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I've greatly enjoyed this, and I'll come back anytime.
Erik, wonderful having you. Thanks so much. Enjoy the rest of the evening. Like I said, with your travels coming up, be safe out there. Appreciate it, Steve. Erik Sherman joining us here on our Lennox on Baseball live stream podcast. That was outstanding. I'll just close. Erik was terrific. At the Twitter, the X handle, by Erik Sherman, Erik with a K. So you can follow him there. He's got some tremendous books. Last year's book was released on Fernando Valenzuela. That'll also go on my reading list as well. But, from Peter Golenbach, who I loved reading as a kid, he wrote the book Personal Fouls on Jim Valvano and North Carolina State. That, like Dwight Gooden in many ways, that book by Peter Golenbach helped me grow up, and always enamored with Davy Johnson. Always. So Peter did a terrific job writing Bats with Davy Johnson on a collaborative effort way back after the Mets won the 86 World Series. And Erik's book, boy, that's really bad when I put the books up there. I've got to put that. Maybe I'll just put them on the back shelf going forward so I have a better angle. But Erik's book with Davy Johnson was terrific as well. And Davy Johnson, whether he made the last out of this 1969 World Series as a member of the Orioles, and had a terrific baseball career as a player, coming out of Texas A&M. Davy Johnson in the 80s is the manager of the Mets. Davy Johnson, present day, is the same exact person. I've never had the opportunity to meet him, but he's just a huge personality. And again, our thanks to Erik Sherman for joining us here on our Lennox on Baseball live stream podcast. We've got more things coming up in the coming days. Looking to talk with Bruce Chattel sometime next week. Who is Bruce? Bruce is the head baseball coach of Del Barton High School in New Jersey. Back in 2019, Bruce, on his roster, had Chris Christie's son, he had Anthony Volpe, and he had Jack Leiter. Why do I bring that up right now? Bruce is a terrific guy. He's a wonderful coach. Just won his 400th career victory at Del Barton a few days ago, so he's reached another milestone. He's also a tremendous hockey coach in the past as well. But Bruce coached those three guys. And I saw him in 2019 at the National High School Invitational Tournament in Cary, North Carolina. Covered that for MLB Advanced Media and MLB.com. And Bruce was the high school coach for Jack Leiter, Al Leiter's son, and Anthony Volpe, who is now in his second year in the big leagues. And Jack Leiter, promoted to the Rangers, first-round pick, went to Vanderbilt. Volpe signed out of high school back in 2019. Jack Leiter went to Vandy and then was drafted by the Texas Rangers organization in the first round. He's going to make his major league debut on Thursday. So we're going to be popping these up. We're going to crawl, walk, run. That's one of my favorites. But as we continue to build this, we hope you're along the way. And please let your friends know about us as well. Great conversation with Erik Sherman. He was on hand for the number 16 jersey retirement for Dwight Gooden at Citi Field on Sunday. We'll talk soon, everyone. Thanks so much.